quiet for a moment, please? I'm going to stand up, but I'm going to stand up because I'm vertically challenged, and I want to make sure I see everybody, all right? I'm Richard French. When we had our first roundtable, we said that we should ask everybody to introduce themselves. That will be difficult tonight. Also, and so I'm the founder of The Works and tried creating dialogue about a month ago. And in that they said, this was great, let's have more of it. And so in that first meeting about a month ago, right over there, which we had about 12 or 14 people, we called it. People had said, this was great, I'm glad that you had the courage, I guess, to call it and to have dialogue, and can we have another meeting? So here's that meeting. Someone just asked me what was my vision, and I have to say, my response was, I obviously need a bigger vision, because the response tonight is much greater than I thought, and is totally apropos of Brattleboro, the one and only. I mean, look what we got as a turnout. Phenomenal. Right. To all of you, can I give a big... Yeah! Nice job. You're at it. Man, we need a bigger vision here. So I hope to be able to be supportive of that bigger vision. Someone, again, said, I'm glad you had the courage. I said, I feel like still the lion in the Wizard of Oz, and I haven't found the man behind the curtain yet, because I won't accept that comment until we have traction for this. And I said that tonight. And what I mean by that is that something comes out that's measurable for this. I have a few, for instances, of notes that I took from our last meeting, and that we can help the cause and help with some solutions to the cause. And I think that that's the only way that I will feel like I had some courage, and then I can accept courage, because otherwise it's just time and energy. So my goal is traction of this. We are talking about possibly some breakout groups where we can get some more dialogue. It'll be difficult to do it with this big of a group. And so we may need to have a bigger place in the next meeting. And we are talking about some breakout groups that will be facilitated by some people that are better at facilitating than I. All right? I do want to mention a couple of things that came out of the last dialogue that were suggestions that I took a mental note of, and then I jotted down of suggestions about the situation in the cause. And some of those were in no priority. Jobs, and creating a bank for jobs that came, where we could call it day jobs and things like that, and we can employ. We did make a step in that, we meaning the company since then, and we hired our new baker, Ed. And Ed, I haven't seen you since then. So Ed has joined force with us, meaning here at the Works, and he's probably one of 4 or 5 people that we have now employed that were homeless and we brought into our family. And I'm really, really, really proud of Ed for making that step, and of the company and my management team for doing that, because it's a bold move. And I said in that meeting, my success rate on that's 1 in 10, and I hope Ed's 1. Thursday morning we had a flood in one of our other cafes. I came running in here really quickly, and he said, I got some egg for you, and I didn't get it because I was too stressed. And I said, what do you mean? And I said, don't have egg on my face if I sign off on this. And he said, I got egg for you. And he was joking with me. It was April Fool's Day. And so the guy's got a sense of humor as well. But so we stepped forward. That's one. We've done a lot more, and we can't do it all. And I'm not saying we're good at all and that we're perfect or I should be on any pedestal. I should get back down right now. But anyway, so jobs was one thing. We need more jobs. We need to help employ some of these folks. Another thing that came out is we need bigger shelters. Ours are overcrowded, and that came out. And we may need to do some mergings or some creative thinking on that. But we need bigger space, bigger shelters. We need day shelters, came out. And again, I'm encouraging some breakout groups around these, because there was no day programming is what I heard in that first conversation as well. So those are 3 now, actionable steps potentially, and they'll only be actionable if we have results on these. Lockers even came up in that we have no place for lockers to, if people are moving around and need to put their place and feel comfortable about it. We talked a lot about that passionately, about theft and having to worry about it and losing some of their valuable possessions that they spent a lot of time caring for and keeping and preserving and everything else. Right, Lawrence?
That would be correct.
All right, great. I want to remember that, and I want to call you out if it's okay about that. But he wasn't the one that brought that up. I think Don was another person that brought that up. And these were some people I met that day. I won't remember all their names, but I'm trying to. So lockers came out. Another one that came out that really struck a chord for me that first day was treating all people, Josh help me, because we talked about this just briefly for a second, equally. And what I mean by that is humanely and not judging. Lawrence, you helped a little bit with that when you talked as well. Josh, you helped me, you made articulate it, so I hand over the mic here. I wish I had a mic. Hold on for a minute. So, that came out really strongly and really passionately that morning as well. And we met here at 7 o'clock in the morning. We had a good turnout. And so those are probably the 5, if that's 5, I think that is 5, the 5 biggest things that struck a chord for me that morning. And again, people have asked what I wanted out of this. And I got more than I wanted so far, but I want more. I want traction, but what I wanted was dialogue, and we've had that. We purposely invited the papers because we wanted to create exposure, and we wanted to put it out in front, and we wanted to be bold enough as a company to do that, but me as a person to put it out in front of people. And I realized that there's been some good conversation on that, and I've had some spirited conversation about that as well, which is all conversation is good, and life is a pendulum, and there's swings, and so is conversation like that. So I think I've spoken enough. I will answer any quick questions, but then I want to turn it over to Josh and to Chad to try to facilitate some breakout groups if that's appropriate, answer some questions. Well, let's try to get dialogue and try to get concrete, actionable groups and topics and suggestions that we can get back in front of various folks. I'm committing Ann Wright. There's Ann. Ann Wright. Wow. So Ann Wright is my right and left hand, and what I mean by that is she really helps organize me. She helps me get everything done, and I couldn't be who I am without Ann Wright. So she's here tonight, and she's committed to taking some notes and to help facilitate getting some of those notes out. She's one person. I don't know how many we have tonight. Somebody should count though, because we need to get that to the reformer, or the comments, or other people, because we have a lot. Great, nice job. And to facilitate some of that out to Peter and to the drop-in center and Lucy and Morning Shelter and all the other great organizations that we need to help create the dialogue and also help create some Governor Shumlin, and we need to create some funding. You know, money helps things go around, and so does conversation. So we also want to have a pad where people can write their name and email and connection so that we can follow up as well. I think that may be helpful. Right, Chad?
Sure.
And follow up, and Ann will compile that list, and we'll get it out, and we may try to break it down. She's better at organizing all of that than I am. I'm not a great organizer. Right, Ann?
What we came up with was a sheet of paper. So I'm just gonna we're so high-tech. I'm just gonna send out a bunch of sheets of paper, and folks can just write their name, their email address. If you have an affiliation that you think would be helpful to us in this work, you can put that down. I'm gonna start an email distribution list. So if you want to be included in what's going on, give me your contact information. Email's best.
Any questions before I turn it over to Chad and or Josh? Josh, you know, we just volunteered you. I know you had a conversation, you said you want to be involved. That I can answer right now. Again, I want to thank the community, and I said on that first meeting, my goal was to have this be a community dialogue and a community conversation. And again, I am blown away, so thank you. And I want to be a community cafe, not only in Brattleboro, but in the other communities that we are in. And this meets that objective, I think, for us as a company and for us in our cafes, where we can have dialogue. Don told me we were doing, not Don, John told me we were doing a couple other things with the Windham County chair here. That Jeff, our fearless leader here of the Brattleboro store, I wasn't even aware that he was doing it. And I love hearing that when I go to one of our cafes and we're opening it up at night and doing things like that. Yeah, there you are.
He didn't even know this, but they've been hosting us for months, meetings of the Windham County Democratic Committee. After hours on a Monday evening, and we come in here and they're closing up shop and doing the books and cleaning the kitchen, and we're having our meetings. We're very grateful. Thank you very much.
You bet. The only thing I didn't tell John, because I just met him tonight, is that if the Republican committee wanted to hold their meeting here, I have to say yes to that. All right. So, all right, and I'm not. So I just wanted to get that out. All right. Anything else?
Our next meeting's the 27th, by the way.
Okay, great. Can I turn it over to you? Sure. Great.
Oh, yeah, like just 2 minutes ago, Richard asked if I would help out and Chad would help out, so here we are. Our challenge that's before us tonight is to take this energy that's in the room and harness it into some actionable next steps. It could be more dialogue, but it could actually be concrete measures that we can take as a community forward. What I would like to do is propose a process to get us there. We just went through this process last week. It was really effective. There weren't this many people in the room, but I propose that we do it. What Richard laid out so far was 5 different areas: jobs, bigger shelter, day shelter, lockers, and how do we make room for everyone in our community. That's 5 different areas. Are there any other 2 or 3 more topics that folks would like to talk about, Don?
Maybe some professional advocates or staff to direct, encourage, and motivate individuals that are in a situation of crisis to do something for themselves. Instead of throwing them out on the street and calling them homeless and turning your eye to them and or profiling them as homeless. Donating to a cause that's not even going to the homeless people. You know, put your money where your mouth is and direct it in a way so that we're not ejected out into society.
Okay, great. I got it.
John.
About 25 years ago in Keene, they had a similar problem. The homeless and the jobless were being fed in all these different churches all around the town. And they realized the problem was growing so much they had to do something very deliberate about it and plan for the presence of homeless and jobless people in the community. So they decided to create what is now the community kitchen in Keene, which is a all week round kitchen and pantry operation. They give food away there once a week. They have regular meals there. And all of the previous meals that were scattered around the community, like they are here in this community, are now taking place there. I ran the capital campaign for the community kitchens building on Mechanic Street. They raised $800,000 to do that. $250,000 of that came in major gifts, including one of $100,000. This is something like we could do here, which would help plan so that the problem of homelessness would be much less accidental. I mean, people are going to be homeless sometimes anyway. Which is the plan. And I would like to meet with people who would like to plan around the serving of meals in the community, because we can pull together the people from the churches that are doing that, and I'm willing to help with that.
Great, thank you, Jim. And I know you had something as well?
And I think, like I've been homeless for 3 years, and I think the real problem with the homelessness is that would solve it all is housing. If the housing plus like they have in Salt Lake City, model it on that program, where they go after the majority of the homeless and get them into housing first before they work on the underlying problems, which could be drugs, alcohol, mental illness. If you get them in a place first, you're not going to have the homeless hanging around the streets. They're going to be in their own homes, and they save the safety city so much money because you don't have the cops who are always out there arresting the homeless. You don't have the homeless that are going to the emergency rooms all the time. It costs so much money to take care of a homeless person. Put them in a housing, and you pay for the housing, and you pay for a social worker or whatever. Maybe it's like assistance, like alcohol treatment or.
So prioritizing the housing
Yeah, because
first.
housing is the key. Yeah, because I can't go anywhere.
So I think we're gonna grab one or two more.
I was gonna say affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
Okay, great.
Can we also talk about what are the reasons for homelessness and how we can end the homelessness?
The root causes of homelessness?
Yes.
Okay.
One more. George?
I think, I love the five that you mentioned, but I'm also thinking, back on sort of motivation, but I think supports and services, and a lot of that is also about supported housing. I think that's really, really important. And, I think this is amazing. I think, Richard, I have to applaud. You just did an incredible job to bring everyone together. This is wonderful. Really amazing. But I think that's important, along with jobs, because that's absolutely critical as well.
Great. So I think, so at this point, I think what we're hoping to do, because this is a great crowd and there's a lot of energy in the room, and it's really exciting. So I think the hope is to break out and spend about 20 minutes talking as small groups around these, 7, 8 areas.
Yeah.
And then spend some time coming up with solutions and getting some traction and some energy within these small groups. And then we'll spend about 10, 15 minutes talking as a full group around what some of the solutions each of the small groups has. And then we'll spend the last few minutes talking about where we can go from there and what that might look like in future conversations happening. So again, this is Josh Davis. He's the Executive Director of Morningside Shelter. My name is Chad Simmons. I'm a resident here in Brattleboro. And we're also very thankful for Richard and for folks to be here. So I think at this point, we'll break out into small groups. And
We've recruited a couple people to help us facilitate those groups so that there's one person that's kind of capturing the notes and can report back out, take responsibility for that. So that way, if you want to participate in multiple groups, you're not set. If you want to go hear what's going on with the day shelter conversation, you can participate in that, give your 2 cents to that group. But then if you want to go over and talk about advocates and how we can better work to support folks, you can go to that group. And we have somebody that'll stay there, capture that information. Then in about 20, 25 minutes, we can report back out.
Could I ask a question for clarity? Is anybody from the drop-in center here? Because Melinda always let people hang out there during the day. Do they still do that?
We do have some day shelter space, but it's very limited.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to be a part of a group that discusses the serving of meals on a regular
Absolutely.
basis. And
What's your name?
John Wilmerding. And also, I have an announcement to make. Our committee, which has served our community Thanksgiving for over a decade, is laying itself down. They are planning not to organize the Thanksgiving this year. So maybe this can also be the occasion of our organizing some more around community helping one another.
So
stay
George,
fed.
we'll talk about meals. John, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And we can,
I can do that.
okay. And that'll be located in this back corner?
Just one other thought. I've been here since New Year's Eve. I took off, went to Burlington, and came back. And I've been on the floor every night in that overflow church since I've been here, other than camping out or wherever else I've been. And everybody that I've seen there, other than the same people that's been on them couches for years, have been on the floor. Why not get a couch for everybody, or a cot, or at least get them off the floor?
Thank you.
Be nice.
So Knowles, do you want to, we'll just kind of assign folks, so can you take the jobs?
Sure.
So folks that are interested in talking about jobs can go to that corner.
Shelter space, day shelter.
So we'll take that one. Yeah, so right over here. Kelly, we'll take on
Day shelter, larger shelter space, but also not to put too much on it, but to consolidate a little bit the lockers as well. bring those together. Housing.
Can't wait for the meeting to
You want to do housing just back, just across the entranceway?
And so just specify this housing and like getting people housing.
Getting people in housing, housing first, making opportunities, more housing opportunities. Over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, supportive services, Libby will, yes, right over here.
What are the possibilities of building on, raising money, whatever is done. Oh, good. Right, so if I just got just saying that either
instead of reforming the tax system so people pay fairly. And the system is broken and it's going to stay broken until we demand of the governor and the legislature that they tax appropriately. See, the process should start with the budget should be what are the needs of the community and now let's raise the money. That's not what they do. They say, how much money do we have? How do we give you enough? And each year it's less. The governor has promised there will be no homelessness for families in 2020. But he's made a lot of promises, and I don't know how he's going to deliver that. But that is one of the promises. There will be no homelessness for families and children. But I don't know how we're going to do that unless we're willing to, as a society, raise the necessary funds. It's simple math, really.
We are right here, and we have to say we can't wait for the state. We can't wait for the governor. What can we do right here with this group of people that wants to take some kind of action? And I think there are enough people here. I talked to people who have said, hey, I've got extra construction material. I'll donate if you can build a tiny house. Or that's really what I'm doing. But I think we have to have both. We have to have that.
And maybe we could get them to donate that property for the homeless or whatever, and then we just bus them back to work to Brattleboro over there. And there's no broken windows, nothing. I've been here about 7 years and it's been empty ever since. And then another problem with the homeless is she has like a dog. She can't go into a shelter anywhere, so they want them to sleep outside. So if they had a place where you can bring a dog, because there are a lot of homeless people that have animals.
people back together again.
So it seems like there were some really, really robust conversations happening in small groups. So what we want to do in the next 10 minutes or so is we want to take the next 10 minutes to kind of do a report back from each group to kind of hear what some of the issues and what some of the solutions might be, or what some of the approaches might be for how we look at homelessness in our community. So we had about 7 different groups that got together, and each group will have one person talk for about 2 to 3 minutes to hear what some of the real salient points were. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull each of those apart. We're going to capture some of those points, and each group will share those points. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of we'll end the evening by talking about what some of those next steps might be. So Corey was in the group talking about root causes of homelessness, so he's going to share just a few words that group spoke about.
Yeah. So I'm Corey. Our group talked about root causes of homelessness, and we talked about what people think about why homelessness exists. Some of the things that the group came up with was that people are living in poverty because we're living in a competitive and economic system that requires some people to be poor in order for there to be people competing for jobs. So the system that requires a homeless class of people. We talked about unequal distribution of wealth and about privatization of land, people owning homes in order to make more profit. We talked about what inequality looks like in the schooling system, and we talked about how people view the poor, and the demonization of the poor, and about the myth of the culture of poverty. So, in moving forward on a local level, we talked about the possibility of having events where people discuss their ideas of why poverty exists, and basically because what we think about poverty influences how we act in the future. So having that analysis of why it exists, we thought in our group was important.
Did you mention anybody mentioned domestic violence as a cause of homelessness? I don't think anybody's here from that.
I think I would like to. A woman in question took out a restraining order on me based on, well, there were some truths in her statements, but it was largely taken out of context and very slanderous. Unfortunately, due to Vermont law, due to the domestic violence problems against women, the court system and the Brattleboro Police Department definitely got to remove me from a property that I was on the lease for. So there we go.
So thank you for that, and we definitely recognize that there's some really really difficult situations that folks are in and have experienced over.
It's not difficult for me anymore, but anyway.
So thanks you for sharing that, and we really appreciate it. And I think
not to shut you off, but domestic violence might be a cause for homelessness, but what about domestic violence while you're homeless?
Oh yeah.
So thank you for sharing that, and we'll definitely capture that and try to infuse that in. What this group is looking at is more of the system that perpetuates homelessness and poverty, and taking an analysis of that system. So what we're going to do now is go on to the next group, and thank you again for your comments and your feedback. So the next group, Kelly, do you want to share what your group spoke about?
I'm Kelly. This group talked about day shelters and lockers. There was a lot of discussion about the capacity of the drop-in shelter, what it can do, the amount of space it has and the amount of resources it has, transportation to and from the drop-in shelter. The bottom line being that the drop-in shelter doesn't have the capacity to serve as, we talked about people needing a warm, comfortable, inviting space to spend their day. We also talked about maximizing resources in the community for building and taking the spaces that are vacant in Brattleboro and utilizing them for housing and for day spaces. We also talked about who's allowed to be in public space, who we feel comfortable with when we sit down at the works, you know, where homeless people can sit in town, who the camping, there's no camping ordinance in Brattleboro, how that affects homeless people, and so what is public space here and what is private space and who's allowed to be in what space. We also at the end talked about how important lockers would be, because as a person who is facing homelessness, you don't have a place to store your stuff, and so just those activities, looking for a job, whatever you need to do, like having a safe place for your stuff is really important, and so finding a safe space for lockers downtown.
Surveillance.
Speaking as a person who
If you wanna
has
say
stayed
something
in the
about
basement
that.
of a Baptist church that is an overflow shelter, I've heard a lot of women in their dorms complaining about things stolen from them in their dorms.
So, thank you for that.
Yeah, we do know.
And so some of the issues we came up with about space is that space is a commodity, and so it costs money, and because of privatization, most of the buildings, the space here, the infrastructure is privately owned, and so how would we get that space, and how could lockers be available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for people?
Could I just add to that? Part of the focus was on the current drop-in center, which has plans for as much expansion as they can manage. It's possible that something could come out of what we do that enables them to do more expansion than they currently think they can through both donated labor and supplies, and we think that there'd be plenty of people around with skills as well as unskilled people who would be very glad to help in building, or improving existing space, but expanding it. And
we're not paying the homeless to do it.
I think the homeless should be part of, anybody who has an interest in helping to create a space could be part of this.
That's great, so kind of a collective
right.
response.
And there's even a possibility they're looking into the house next door to them. It's purchasing that. That would certainly take money, and a certain amount of money would be needed even if we had a lot of volunteer labor to do expansion on the existing buildings.
So this is one of the reasons why small group activities are so great, because you get a lot of these kind of really great ideas popping out of them, and I think this is really fantastic. So I just want to say a couple of things before we move on. One, we asked a lot of these small group facilitators to work on the spot and jot down notes and come up with the salient points on the spot. So I want to thank all of those facilitators of each group for doing that. If folks that did facilitate can hang on to their notes, and we'll capture those as our way of kind of capturing what's happening tonight, we'd really appreciate that. And a lot of these ideas that have come up, we'll be able to kind of continue the conversation and make sure that everything gets captured in future conversations. So thank you for sharing. So the next group, how about this group over here? Rebecca?
We talked about how housing, like the housing first models that are happening throughout the nation, specifically in Utah, that people should be put into housing before any other conditions are met, and that actually having a stable house helps people to get on their feet and overcome the other challenges that they might be facing. We talked a little bit about why that's not happening right now, and the fact that we live in a system that puts profit over people, and it's more important to sell things and make money out of it than to actually take care of our community. So some of the suggestions that we have are the empty buildings and other community resources that we have to start utilizing them immediately. And in order for that to happen, people cannot be criminalized for trying to meet their basic needs. So that includes, if you don't have food and you're finding any way to get food that you can, that should not be a crime. If you don't have a house and shelter over your head, finding that should not be a crime. We also talked about how people, both materials and labor power can be used to build houses, like some of the tiny house models was suggested, but that they can't be sold for a profit. That they can be sold for just what it costs to make it. And the last thing, another suggestion was that there should be a tax on people who own houses in order to pay for people who don't have houses currently.
Yeah.
There was a lot of other things said, so I didn't capture it all, but those were some of the major points.
That's great. Thank you. That was really great. So, how about the group in the corner that was talking about kind of empathy? Yes.
This was really tricky because it's not a tangible thing that you can hold on to, and it's really a larger systems problem. So ideally the conversation would start with talking about homelessness as one injustice of many in the world. And that is really hard for all of us to wrap our heads around. And so kind of zeroing in from there, how to start the conversation with our peers or with our colleagues or folks in Brattleboro, because we really see a disconnect between how most people in the community treat and or tolerate the homeless community, and those many of us that are in this room that see that as kind of on a different plane than some of the tangible solutions that we're going to talk about today. So getting more tangible, we thought, how are we trying to deal with these stereotypes? You tell stories, whether that is a series in the letter to the editor of I Could Be Homeless, how so many of us are just a step or two or three away from being in the same situation. Setting up peer-based groups, small discussions like this of how to embrace, how to treat other human beings with worth, regardless of their home situation. Having a listening festival, learning how to listen enables better understanding and enables speech. Thank you. Also, setting up coffee hours or conversations with the members of the homeless community. They have to be at the table. We're not talking about homeless. We're talking with the homeless. So setting up coffee hours with members of the homeless community and merchants on Mainstreet and in Brattleboro to swap stories and to hear, get dialogue starting and learning about people's plights and learning about them as human beings. School involvement, having a whole homeless themed gallery walk that could be a place for some of these things to happen. Yeah, it's a big. We would love. It's not a conversation that we can have in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well said. We'll speak to that point in just a few minutes. Thank you so much. That was really great, and I think as many of us can attest to, and as many of us have shared already, stories really kind of drive how we want to respond to many of these issues that we face. So did I get everyone over on this side of the table?
It was the miscellaneous group here.
Miscellaneous group?
I don't know. You want to say something?
So was there another?
If you don't want to finish it, when you finish, I'll say something. Me first. We only had a group of two.
Okay, a group of two. That's all. That's all it
Everything
takes.
else wasn't a topic for the other groups. And well, Ed brought up something very important. But he's fortunate. He got a job here, and he feels made a huge difference in amplifying his self-respect, which he had lost. And that's a very important point. If you show self-respect and connectedness with the other, no matter who the other is, it makes a big difference to the other, and it gets fed back to you, and it amplifies your own feeling of goodness about yourself. So attitude is very important, I think. And then Ed suggested, some other people already did, looking at a lot of these empty buildings, Flat Street and out on Putney Road, and seeing if they can be converted into housing. And the other thing, part of the first point I made was this. Ed is very grateful, naturally, to Richard for giving him this job. But I said to Ed, you know, it's a two-way street. You're going to do something for Richard. He's already thinking of a new muffin. That wasn't here. What's the company on the New York Stock Exchange? Who knows?
Bagels.
So you say a few things, okay?
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to gain my self-respect and my dignity back. You know, if every homeless person got this chance, they'd get the same thing back. So I'm going to reciprocate at some point in time during the future to any one of these homeless people in the hand, you know, because, you know, I'm not rich, but hey, I'll share. I'm not greedy.
The word you used was he's going to become an advocate. Now that he's emerged. I think we made our report. What do you think? Anything else?
Probably encourage other people in the shelter too, by the way.
I agree with that, Don. I don't think we'll be successful with that until he's off the floor, and until there's a roof over his head.
Oh, yeah.
The job's one piece, just like Don said.
Right. Now he has some money, so he can do something.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Not enough.
Yeah, not enough. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
That's another topic for another committee.
I agree with you on that.
And I think that resonates with everyone here in this, at least I feel that resonates with everyone in the room here. It's that compassion. How about this group over here?
We're the supportive services group. Look at the stand in front of you. And we had a couple of good actionable things that we think we could take forward out of this. One scenario we talked about is how we need some good early recovery services for folks who have substance abuse and mental health issues. And that one thing we could do is create a mobile outreach team, people who could work on the streets of the community, in public places. We have people who go out into the woods and check on people. This is a different need. About checking on people here in town as they're, trying to find a place to sit and be for the day. Currently, the Brattleboro Police Department is doing a lot of that work, and that's not the best fit. And Kristen, the police social worker, is doing a lot of that work, and it's really not necessarily what her job was designed for. That we could create a team, and somebody pointed out that in Keene they have 2 full-time social workers who are an outreach team. One is hired by the Mental Health Services Agency, and one is hired by the Community Action Agency there, that do exactly this work. And has it been successful, would you say?
I guess it would depend on your definition of successful.
Sure. But it's somebody that...
But they're not just in the woods, they're on the streets. They're talking to the guys who are sitting in the park just doing nothing but drinking. They're talking to the people who maybe have a mental health issue that they haven't gone in to see someone about, and then they're getting people into services where they might not have otherwise gone into services. Yeah. And if they are, causing a ruckus, there's kind of somebody that you can maybe send there that familiar face to kind of calm it down before you have to get the police involved. It'd be great if you could have someone there before the police have to step in, because like she just said, you have the police doing a job that maybe they're not exactly supposed to be doing, kind of doing these social workers and police officers at the same time. And you kind of, again, like I said, this is a familiar face. These outreach workers are on the street every day talking. The people know who they are. So.
But this is the idea. It's somebody to go out into the community, check on people, make sure that they're getting the services that they need and getting hooked into those services. And we talked about the possibility of whether this could be a volunteer position or a paid position through an agency. And I think we came to the conclusion that this is really valuable work that we should find resources to pay for, just so that we can keep the people invested in this work as well. And the second actionable thing that we came up with was potentially some kind of creative financing group
that could look at different ways that we could help pull the community resources together to help work on this problem. One example of that is there are some cities in the U.S. where the public libraries have hired social workers because they have similar problems to that we see here in the summertime, where people hang out at the library because it's air conditioned and it's a place to be. It's open all day and it's for the public. So, you know, we happen to know that our library just got a sizable chunk of cash, and that might be one way to creatively finance, you know, in partnership with the library. So that was it.
Excellent. So I think we have one group left. Looking at two. I'm sorry, two. So the food group. Yep.
Yes, not surprising that I'm part of the food group. For those of you that know me.
Who are you?
We're a small group. Bob Osher is here with Loaves and Fishes, and John has started a kind of a bread program. Is that correct?
We did a few years ago, yeah.
And I have been coordinating Grace's Kitchen for the last 10 years, and at First Baptist Church. And I think one of the things that we talked about is if you want to know what the resources are in town as far as eating, you look in the Commons, and there's a chart that's about this big, that's very, very small print, very, very hard to read. And the places to eat are all over town. They're not in one place. And so we talked about collaboration and having, I think the bigger word is a shelter, 24/7 shelter, but one place where people could eat 3 meals a day and not have to wonder where they go for their next meal. And so we thought that was a really important issue. The other issue that we thought was very important is there's no breakfast served in town. And perhaps breakfast is the most important meal in the day and the best place to start. Find a place to serve breakfast for people that need it. What a great way to start today. And I also want to publicly apologize to Ed. I came in tonight, and Ed and I know each other. I won't say how, but we know each other. And he is so proud of his new job. And he offered me a cup of coffee, and I turned it down, and I'm sorry. Because you gave me a gift, you offered me a gift, and I didn't accept it. And the next time I see you, you're going to buy me a cup of coffee.
We're going to see you Wednesday.
But I think that's the respect back and forth that we all need. So I wanted to say that. The other thing that we really talked about was that over the past 10 years, I have definitely seen the face of poverty is changing. You cannot tell sitting in this room whether the person beside you qualifies, whether their kids qualify for free meals or whether they qualify to go to the food shop, the food shelf. I mean, I'll let you know, I'm retired. I live very comfortably, but I earn little enough so that I qualify to go to United Way and have my taxes done free. And I think a face like mine needs to say things like that. The face of poverty is changing. At Grace's Kitchen, we get more and more families, and we get more and more elderly. By the end of the month, making choices between medicine or food.
Great.
So that's just, I'm sorry, that's my bandwagon. What else did we?
So how about one more point?
Yeah, I could get going, couldn't I? You can tell.
I'm not saying that, but I'm cognizant.
Well, we just talked really about bringing meal providers together. You know, maybe the three of us need to meet more often. Others that do provide meals and see what we can do. Right now, Grace's Kitchen, I believe, is the only evening meal in town. But there's other meals elsewhere. So
thank you. And I apologize. Can you say your name for the group?
I'm Jean Dio.
Jean?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jean. So I think we have one final group left to report back, and then we'll kind of do some final thoughts.
Hey, I'm Noel Swinworth with HCRS. Yeah, we had a nice little intimate group, just 4 of us, 5 of us maybe, and we came up with a lot of decent ideas here. I'm going to hit the highlights. The first off was work with compensation at the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center. Imagine that. I mean, in addition to your employees, of course. Pay someone to get. There's peer support networks that are becoming more and more popular these days. And what about paying folks who happen to be homeless to be peer support workers to actually make up the outreach team that we've referenced a couple of times? Jobs we're finding, Phil from Voc Rehab indicated that a lot of jobs these days are online. And there isn't as much word of mouth as there used to be. And so with people without computer access, the word of mouth needs to spread more, for sure. 2 more I'll highlight. One is this idea of a video story of folks who happen to be homeless at the moment, to kind of highlight the struggles that they've had and what they would need to kind of get over the hump and get employed. Something that could actually be, with trust in the system, something that actually be played to a potential employer. And this kind of goes in conjunction with my favorite idea, which is kind of, actually 2 more. One of which is this, it's kind of like a big brother, big sister model, where you have the employer taking someone on, not in a patronizing way, but as in taking on an employee, but adding in the care and concern for that person component, which you don't typically have for an employer-employee situation. And then lastly, there was a model that Renew Salvage used to have, but of course they went out of business, as we know, where they used to bring people in where they could both get the training on the job, of course, and some pay and some compensation to boot. So we need to kind of resurrect that piece in Brattleboro. Those are the biggies.
Great, thank you, Noel.
Yeah.
So at this point, I want to thank, let's see if I can do this now, Corey, Kelly, Becca, Maggie, Ed, Mel, Libby, Jean, and Knowles. Volunteering to facilitate those small groups. I have to admit, I'm really moved by what came out of those groups. And so if folks that facilitated could bring me your notes in whatever form that you jotted down, and I'm looking to the person to my left at the comments, we'll be able to capture all the other things that we left out, hopefully. And to folks at BCTV for capturing that. So if folks could give those notes to me, we'll be able to capture some of those thoughts. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and we'll talk about kind of the next steps and how we'll... Yes, we are. Yes. So, yes, George.
You thank all those facilitators, but no one thanks you and Josh. And I want to thank you guys for a great job.
So we jumped in on the fly. The plan is developing right now. Is there follow-up? Yes, I think we need to follow up, because otherwise all we're going to get out of this is a brainstorm. We might feel good about what happened tonight. I feel great about coming together, but our challenge before us that was set down by Richard was tractionable items. What can we do to move this issue forward? One of those is collecting the information, so let's make sure those notes are turned in. There was a sheet that went around for email addresses. Make sure if you're interested in following up that your name gets on that sheet. That's going to be how we're going to communicate with you. We can also communicate with the paper. Within a month, it would be good to get back together. Is this a list if anybody needs it? Within a month, we will send these notes out to everybody so that everybody can look it over. Everybody can digest the information, think about it, marinate it, share it with your friends, share it with other people that weren't here. Mr. Rose, you have a question?
Just wanted to point out that there were sheets going around with names and addresses. You've got them all.
So just make sure those get into Chad or Richard or...
Is there anyone that has not put their name and email down on this paper yet? Maria? Great, we'll get it to John. All right.
So we'll send that around. For people that weren't here tonight that you think should be here, once we establish a date and we communicate that date, let's gather the same energy, the same amount of people to come back again and start talking about next steps. Really, this is about moving it forward. It's going to take more than just one meeting to really dig into this issue, but it seems like we have a commitment. Look at the turnout from the first meeting to this meeting. So, any other last words that?
Yeah, we're already talking about a next meeting for this small group here to talk about meal planning and the serving of relief meals. So,
what about having homeless cook some of the meals?
We're talking about planning and where they will take place.
So if you guys already have
a community
you can
plan,
communicate that to Olga, and we can get that out in.
Yeah, but I would encourage other people to consider doing that as subcommittees of the larger group too.
Great.
Just you sort of touched upon it already. It sounds like you have a small committee, maybe 10 or less people, who will deal with this, discuss it, and maybe make suggestions before coming back. Remember, before coming back to the big group. We've got much more.
I think we'll be a little bit more prepared next time. Thank you. And the last one, thank you, Richard.